Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Making magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo and we're here at the South Park Center and I'm here with Juan Pablo with his movie Hombres. Let's take a look at the clip. JP, Juan Pablo, my goodness, what an amazing film. Like, wow, what a journey you took me on. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis.
So, Hombre is about a young boy, Miguel, who goes on a hunting trip with his father. There's a weird dynamic because they don't really know each other that much. And during one of these nights, Miguel sees a monster in the forest. And then after he sees that monster, he makes the decision of not telling his father because he knows that he won't buy into any of these childish fantasies. He will just make the whole experience worse. So during this experience of fear and silence, he kind of has to decide how to handle this experience and trying to live up to his father's expectations of him, basically.
It was a great story, and then you had this really scary things that were going on. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. This is too much. This is brilliant, you know? I wasn't expecting all of those things, and even just the audience last night were like completely in fear. So thank you for that. But where did the inspiration come for you in creating this story?
Well, I love horror movies, you know, but I've always felt like a lot of the horror that is made doesn't really respect the genre enough to make it meaningful.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like a lot of it is, which is good. It's okay. Like there's horror films for all tastes, and it's good that it exists. But for me personally, I always walk out of a horror movie without a sense of satisfaction, like intellectual satisfaction.
Yes.
You know, I always want to come out of a movie thinking about what it was about, or just that it's showing some sort of human contradiction that is interesting, something to talk about.
Yeah.
And I feel like most horror films don't really concentrate on that. They just concentrate on the spectacle of it.
I love that you said that, because I found that from your film. I was actually really appreciating this wasn't just going for the scares and not just going for those kind of cheap thrills. You literally engaged in this really great, estranged relationship between a father and a son, and then had this other dynamic that was like, oh my goodness, which kind of just gave more richness to the story that you were writing. And I'm glad that you did that, because I agree. I think there's not enough films right now that have the intelligence of what you've created in this particular genre. So, you know, it's your talent. What can you do when you're talented? You know, what can you do? Firstly, aside from this crazy story, you shot this in Chile in this beautiful, you know, incredible part of the world, which was great. I'd love to tell me about that. And also, you had this really great cast of this father and son. How was the casting process, and obviously deciding to find this particular location as well to shoot?
So it was, everything was very low budget. We didn't cast that much. We kind of just picked a person, and we tried a few people, like 2 or 3 people for each role, but there wasn't like a massive call for auditions. So I would basically just meet with them and talk to them, and then if I get a feeling that they would be right for the part, I would just cast them. Like it was a very different process of what you would do here in LA. So Daniel, the dad, he's an actor back home. He's been in a couple features, he's been in a couple TV shows, so he's a professional actor. And he's great. I love him. Great. I can't wait to work with him again. And the kid, Franco, he was in a couple of short films from the undergrad that I made back home. That's how I knew him. My film's not from undergrad, but I work with most people that I met in school, and when we casted, we searched for kids, which is very tricky, you know, like working with a kid who's able to provide all these emotions on screen. But Franco's great. He's very open. He's very genuine. That's the thing. I think it's great that he doesn't get scared when the camera's there.
Yeah.
And he's smart. He doesn't overthink anything.
Yeah.
and I'm just like there trying to explain the scene. It's like, yeah, I got it. So like,
he's very real though.
Yeah.
I mean, he really, you know, you almost, you knew what he was feeling, you knew what was going on in his mind, you know, and you kind of, I'm glad that he was like that because it felt very free and that you could just let him do and he'll just, you know, discover. This beautiful background of where did you have an idea of where you wanted to shoot? Was it close to where you're from, or how was that experience?
We had to scout a lot. So where I'm from Santiago. There's no really forests around that part.
Yeah.
So you have to go down south to find a deep primordial forest that you would want for a movie like this. And we scouted in the south, we scouted in Valdivia, we scouted in Puerto Montt, we went all over the place. And we found this forest in Hornopiren, that's the name of the town. And yeah, it's just like the combination of the forest, but it was really close to this body of water, and just that you can feel the isolation, which was important. Like it was important for it not to feel like it was close to any civilization.
Yeah,
it was important for it to feel like it was very removed, just so that you would buy that there was this monster that they would just come across, you know.
Okay, so this monster, right? Now, this monster is probably going to give me nightmares the rest of my life, just letting you know. But like, what I loved about the way you directed this was that you just left us so many times just in darkness. Like, you know, and of course, there's a great fear for all of us of the dark and what's around the corner. And then this thing would appear. Now, firstly, this monster you created was incredible, like unbelievable. What sort of process do you know what you want in creating this monster, and what kind of effects as a director do you want to sort of have for your audience to kind of have those fear factor moments when they're watching this as you're taking them on that journey?
Well, there's a bunch of references, but when I first wrote it, I always pictured the monster like that, and I think the reference process or the investigation process was kind of figuring out where that came from. You know, like why is this image of my mind? What does this mean? And then when you try to communicate that, trying to find the references of how that's an image in your brain, and then also everyone who comes in the team brings in their own references. So I think there's just something inherently scary about a naked person. You know, there's something so that I think the sexual intensity of a nude body, it's something that usually it's not represented in horror movies either. And it's so real, you know, like there's something there that's true, at least for me. I don't know, it's like in horror movies are supposed to be for adults, so why are we not taking advantage of that? At least in my mind. And for references, we looked a lot of Pan's Labyrinth was one of the the white monster in Pan's Labyrinth was a huge reference. There's this movie called it's New Moon or something like that. It's like a B movie with Amy Smart that the people from Blair Witch Project did back in the day. It's like their second movie, and it's just it's what's the name? The Year of the Moon or something like that. But it has a very interesting group of monsters, white monsters, and I watched that when I was a kid, and I probably was just so afraid of it that it's been on my head since forever. So
it's great that you captured this into your film. What was the biggest challenge that you had in making this project?
I think one of them is just how low budget everything was. So we were basically just going around with the camera in a suitcase of lenses. No trucks to move people around, and just having to shoot at 4 a.m. in a forest. You know, there's it's intense because you have everything against you. It could start raining any second. You lose entire days of shooting because the rain. When you're that deep inside the forest, if it could be 12 p.m. and there's no light. So it was just like fighting against nature and also fighting against your own energy, you know. And the technical part is also very it's very low key. Everything's so cheap But that helps. I think that helps the feeling of it, you know, like it doesn't feel like a big production. And if it, in my mind, if it would have felt like a bigger production, then it would have felt more safe.
Yeah.
You know, like you want to feel like this is it's very real. There's something very naturalistic about the way that it's just the bare minimum to shoot the movie.
Well, I mean, it didn't feel low budget at all, and that's the most amazing thing.
That's
So
good.
that was another illusion you gave us. What was it like? Because I've seen it previously, but I saw it in the audience last night, and I could feel you had the audience just go like on the edge of their seats. What was that experience like in New Filmmakers last night? How was that experience for you having it?
It's always different. Sometimes they go like that when they see the monster for the first time. Sometimes right before when he's like with the flashlight. It's always great. It's always very satisfying when you're setting up those little moments and people respond to them so in the way that you meant them to be. It's great. It's always different, and it's always a surprise. So like I'm sitting there like expecting how are they gonna react. Luckily this time it works. I'm sure there's gonna be some time in the future when I'm gonna try to do something similar and people are just gonna respond. But it's interesting because you don't get to see that until you see it on a big screen, until you see it in a theater. When you're editing it in a small screen and you're so used to it, you know what's going on. It's just have to trust your instincts on
absolutely
how you've seen movies before and just try to build it around that and just like on theory. But you don't really get to know if it works until you see it on a big screen and you hear people gasp at that moment or just like jump. But it's great. I that's one of the things I love about horror.
What's next for you?
So right now, related to this particular concept, I'm writing the feature of Hombres.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
Yeah, I'm adapting it to Mexican American characters in the U.S. So it's gonna expand on the concept of the father and son, the supernatural versus the naturalism of that relationship and the monsters that we are, but also it should be expanded also into the particularly the singularity of the Mexican American experience.
Yeah.
In the land. I mean, it's a concept that I'm exploring, but it has to do with a land that it should be around California. It should be around something that used to be Mexico, but now it's the U.S.
Ooh,
but it's
I like
really
that.
it's an underlying concept of like does this land really belong to?
Well, California essentially was Mexico, right? So there you go. Yeah, I love that.
It's kind of erased from history, though.
Yeah, it is.
So
I like to remind people about it actually.
So it's something that at least I'm trying to
I love that.
to analyze in the script and to try to give an underlying layer of who we are as monsters too, and hopefully bring out that side of history to.
Well, one thing I enjoy about your work is that you're bringing true great narrative to a genre that sometimes where it gets neglected. So but. Again, you're talented. What can you do? So I'm excited that Hombre because I really felt it's one of those films that you really want to see as a feature. Like I want to see more. Like you left me wanting more. So I'm delighted that you're adapting it with this Mexican American experience in California. So that's going to be great. So listen, congratulations, Juan Pablo, on this version, and we're looking forward to seeing the next one as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Hombre, everybody.